As I've said, my name is Cynthia Nyongesa. I am a 25-year-old Kenyan. And I always start by saying that I am passionate about advancing the rights of children and young people in Kenya, and not just in Kenya, but in Africa and across the world. So I'm really so excited to speak about this topic because for a long time at this age and in the kind of career that I chose, I always felt out of place. I always asked myself, what am I really doing with my life? Am I really doing the right thing? Am I making the right choices? But I think also speaking to you today really just affirms that I'm actually headed in the right direction. So I'll share a bit of my story and then a bit of the lessons learned, and then I'll ask you to send any questions that you may have. So my story would really begin from the time I was around in class 6, and I developed an interest in journalism. And for me, it was more about telling stories. I remember it really just started out when we were performing a play in class, and as children, we had assigned ourselves different roles. So there were people who were acting, others were making the props. And for me, naturally, it just came naturally. I cannot say that somebody told me to do it. Naturally, I took up the role of a reporter. So I was the one who was reporting on what was happening at that mini drama festival of ours. And as life went on, I had that interest and it kept shifting here and there. And I also realized that when I was young, I was really interested in areas of humanities and telling stories. But when I got to high school, the high school I went to, we had a deputy principal who was so passionate about children and especially girls' education. I remember for her, immediately KCP results were released and our children had been selected to go to different schools. She'd go checking off the list and asking herself, why isn't this girl here? Why isn't this girl here? And one thing, of course, she would notice all the time is that girls who are coming from very marginalized areas in Northeastern and Turkana, sometimes even here in Nairobi, were not able to come to school because of various reasons like child marriage and all those issues that girls were going through. And she would actually look for those girls, look for the head of education in that small county in the middle of nowhere and ensure that those girls would come to school. And for me, that was just so inspiring. I remember I used to say, when I grow up, I want to be like her. And she told me actually that you can be anything that you want to be. So I went on with that notion. And that's when my interest in law actually solidified. And I kept saying that I want to be a champion for the rights of children. So when we were selecting our courses in Form 4, I remember my first option was law, and then my second option was mass communication, and then the other two I remember I just guessed to fill the form, but I was very sure about my first two choices. And the Joint Admissions Board then actually called me to study mass communication. And then now here is where the conflict started coming. Should I go study mass communication? That is what the government had called me to study, or should I just pursue this other passion in law and then I can find my way through communication and journalism? So it was really confusing. I remember even by the time I was joining first year, I kept asking myself, have I made the right choice for my life? I kept asking myself all the time. By the end of the second semester, I was thinking, let me just leave and go back to first year and study journalism or mass communication. But it's not because that I was shifting away from the law. It's only that I was never sure. And at 18, at 19, you really need to stop pressuring yourself to figure out the rest of your life. I know Musalia has said that he had figured it out by 22. Some of us, it's just taken so much longer. But I remember what then I decided at that particular point was that I have taken law, but how do I also develop my interest and passion for communication? And so I remember I started looking through the units who were studying in school, and there was a particular unit in fourth year called Media and the Law. And to be honest, at that particular point when I was in first year, the only reason why I stayed in law school, the major reason why I stayed in law school is because I was looking forward to study that particular unit in fourth year, because I thought, I didn't know that the law and media actually have some sort of interlinkage. And so I stayed. But of course, now in between the formation, between the blend, between the law and journalism started coming in. So in 2016, there was a competition by the World Bank Kenya called the Blog for Development Competition, and basically asking young people to share their ideas on development issues. And so I participated in that competition, and like I've told you, my gift for communication and journalism was just very natural. So out of 800, I was one of the 10 who were selected for an interview at the World Bank Kenya office. And so when I went for the interview. I was so psyched up to win. I always tell that story. And then I did not win. And I remember I was so discouraged. But I believe this was also God's way of leading me towards the right path, because it was at that point from that interview that I did that one of the ladies who interviewed me, who's the head of communication at World Bank, and the country director herself, actually gave me feedback, and they told me, we actually see the talent that you have, but you need to find a way of linking it to what you're studying and to understanding the development issues in your country. And so that was a challenge for me. It was really good feedback, and I truly appreciate it up to this day. And they challenged me and they told me, why don't you think of something you can do or something that you can start that will impact the lives of children and young people? And remember, I've told you I'm passionate about the rights of children, and then I have this talent in communication. So how do I bring it together? At that point in second year, of course, I am not a billionaire, so I had to start thinking of the resources that I had. And I remember one of my mentors had actually told me, do your little thing. She had interviewed the late Professor Wangari Maathai, and the late Professor Wangari Maathai told her, ask yourself what you will do for your country. And so I looked at the resources that I had. I just had a platform called blogging and everything. So I went on Google and searched, what is blogging? What is this? And then I realized I could write. And I started asking myself, what kind of stories do I want to write that can actually link to what I like? And I said, okay, I interact with a lot of young people who are driving change in their communities, but nobody tells those stories, or rather, very few people tell those stories. And so I began to write there in second year. You can check it out. It's called cynthiauntamed.com. And then I realized it's not just about writing, because the more I wrote, the more young people started getting opportunities. So now it was linking my talent with creating opportunities for other people. So let me give an example. I remember one time I wrote this story of a young lady who was running a book organization, ensuring that children access education and also have safe spaces, which are also libraries in their schools. And when I wrote that story, for me, it was just writing, but for her, it was a really big deal. And out of that, she was able to get a fellowship called the Resolution Project Fellowship. That's through the Mastercard Foundation. And that's just one example. But I realized, oh, wait, so my talent in communication and understanding the needs of children and young people can actually come together and create opportunities. And so I remained consistent with that. I kept doing that all the time, never giving up. But of course, trying to network. I was just your ordinary, everyday university student. I did not come from some big family somewhere. I didn't know people. I just started where I could. And now where I landed in communication now properly, professionally, is in 2017. What happened is I was just minding my own business, and then my friend tells me, oh, have you seen this opportunity by UNICEF Kenya? They want a young person who's between 18 and 24 who can travel to South Africa and launch on the future of African children and young people. And she told me, why don't you send your profile? So I sent, forgot about it, spent a whole month living my life. In fact, I remember on the day I was called, University of Nairobi had gone on strike, so we had all been sent home. So I was just in the house waiting for schools to reopen at some point. And they called me, they said, you've seen your profile and this is an interview. So it was that random. And they asked me all that I do. I talked about being a law student. I talked about my digital platform, Cynthia Untamed. And a week later, they told me, you've gotten the opportunity. So your responsibility is to voice the issues that are affecting children and young people. And they were launching a report in Johannesburg. And so that's how I left this country for the first time. I had never flown out of the country. And I think it was only my second or third time being on a plane. And so when we went to South Africa, I was actually able now to use the knowledge that I was getting from class in terms of the issues that were affecting children and young people, and be able to voice them through a media platform, because the people who were organizing this conference were actually communication professionals, but I had the legal knowledge, and it was very easy to blend it in. And so a year after that, still being consistent with the work that I do, luckily, before I just graduated, UNICEF advertised for a youth advocates program, and it was also for young people between 18 and 24 years to work at UNICEF for a year and to use what they could to advance the rights of children. And so I applied for it, was interviewed, and I got it. And that's how I landed in communication and advocacy. And I can say in the last 3 years, it's really been an amazing journey. But remember, I was also studying law. By this time, I had already graduated, and I kept asking myself, how do I know what I know and know what I don't know? I really had to figure out where the blanks were. And so, of course, last year, the COVID pandemic just appeared from nowhere, and I was in this WhatsApp group it's called Network of Women in Media and PR, and they put a poster on a course called Professional Diploma in Public Relations by the Chartered Institute of Public Relations and the University of Nairobi. I was like, should I do it? Should I not do it? And then eventually I decided to do it because we were all at home, but also because I really wanted to know what I didn't know and what I knew. And I did the course for 10 months. I graduated just about 3 months ago. And what I came to understand is that over the years, I had all the skills, but I really needed to understand how to measure and evaluate campaigns, because the work that I do right now really majorly involves running campaigns that are able to advance the rights of children and young people. So don't be afraid to move out of what you studied in undergrad to study something else, so that you also bring your passions and your interests together. And so there's also the element of advocacy. Remember, I never left that side. It's only that it was taking me time to put it together. So now I was very qualified in the communication bit of it, but now I needed to learn how to be a better advocate. How do I ensure that you have policies that actually advance the rights of children and young people? Yes, we're running a campaign on ending violence, but we have policies that actually ensure that our campaign will actually be implemented. And so 2 years later, I decided to go back to the Kenya School of Law, and that's where I am right now, where I'm training to be an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. And that is now really bringing the context together, because I've been able to travel through the country and see this is the reality on the ground, and this is what I need to do once I become an advocate. And so the lessons that I learned from this journey that I'd say was more of an accident, but also God sent, is that you need to have options for the future. Because for me, I look at myself and I can see myself fitting in very many roles. I could be a communication officer. I could be an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. I could be the Chief Justice. I could be the Minister for Education. I could be the State House spokesperson. I mean, I could do so many things just because of the passions that I have, but also because I'm able to align. My role model is actually, one of my role models is actually Ambassador Amina Mohammed. And I can say she's really the one who inspired me to go back to school and to go to the Kenya School of Law. You may remember last year she was vying to be the head of the World Trade Organization. And just around that time, she was admitted as an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. And I was like, oh, wait, I can actually be an ambassador at some point. And so the second thing I learned is that it also helps you to reduce some sort of job burnout. What I've seen with a lot of advocates is that after a long period of time, many of them start saying they're tired, they're bored. But I think also diversifying yourself enables you to be in one space today, another space tomorrow, and you're still accomplishing and impacting the lives of the people you are working with. The third lesson I learned is that it is very important to adapt to the current job that you're doing, whether it is in a voluntary role or you're being paid. It's very important for you to adapt. Now, let me give you an example. One time, I remember I'd come from law school. Now I was working in communication. And I remember there was a point where we didn't have a photographer in our department. And I am the one who's tasked with running campaigns and creating content, but I couldn't take pictures. And I told myself, I actually need to learn that. And so I saw this workshop in Rwanda to train people on photography. And I was like, okay, I'd really like to see Rwanda, and I'd also like to learn how to take pictures. And so I paid for it and I went to Rwanda. I spent 10 days there learning the basics of photography. I didn't want to be a photographer, but I knew that I needed to adapt so that I could be able to accomplish the tasks that I was doing. The fourth thing I learned is that when you diversify your career portfolio, you also expose yourself to a lot of opportunities. I've talked about being a lawyer and working at UNICEF, but diversifying myself also has enabled me to sit in youth advisory boards. If you're a young person, basically a youth advisory board is where you have an organization, but you find that a lot of times programs are implemented, but you don't really get to hear the voices of young people. And so I sit in youth advisory boards. One is called Generation Unlimited, where Kenya is a very big partner. That's where I advise partners on partners like the UN, the MasterCard, the Global Partnership on Education, on advancing the rights of young people and what actually works when it comes to education, engagement, and employment opportunities. One of them being diversifying your career portfolio. That's something I could talk about. The other place I've been able to be exposed in is the Global Partnership for Education, which really now focuses on education. And that's really what I'm passionate about, the right of education for every child. So that has enabled me to do so many things. And being someone who's learned communication, just the other day in July, we had the conference, the Global Education Summit, that was being hosted by the Kenyan government. That's our president and the Prime Minister of the UK, Boris Johnson. And I was actually able to open that summit and moderate a couple of panels. And remember, I'm a lawyer. Nobody taught me how to read teleprompters. I literally was just told, today you're moderating the education research team. You need to read a teleprompter. And I'm like, I've never read it. But I also learned, and the good things that the crew also experienced, so they also taught me how to pace myself, how to read, how to focus, and do all those things. So I could easily be a news anchor today. Fifth thing, I'm almost done, is that diversifying your career portfolio also enables you to widen your experience and perspective. And I learned this especially through traveling. Remember, I told you when I went to South Africa, that was the first time I left this country. But because of that, I was actually able to interact with a different set of people. You're able to interact, for example, in that case, with the young people of South Africa, and they're able to talk about their issues. And sometimes you find there's similarities to the Kenyan context. Sometimes you find there's a difference. Let me give one example of the hair. I remember there was this girl I was with, and she was at the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy, and she was telling me in her previous school, girls were being forced to straighten their hair just to ensure somehow it was straight. And this is an African girl, and her hair, of course, cannot just be straight. That's just how it is. And I was like, I've never heard of such a thing, because in Kenya, well, the schools I have been to, nobody was ever forced to have straight hair. In fact, I remember in my high school, majority of the people had kinky hair, and it was all normal. We had a lady who used to do blow dry, but nobody would come and attack you just because your hair was not straight. And for me, I was just like, wait, people live like this. So you're also able to understand different cultures. You're able to learn new things, meet new people, and widening your perspective really is just so important. Lastly, the other aspect of widening your perspective is that you're also able to understand different issues. So, for example, I remember there was a time we were doing the Legal Service Week in Kwale, and this was through UNICEF. But I remember when I went to Kwale and we were visiting children's remand centers, I remembered that I was actually living in a cocoon, that I am here saying that I want to be an advocate, I want to advance the rights of children and young people, yet I didn't understand all the issues that, for example, some of the children are going through. So like through interacting with those children, I realized Just because a child is in a remand center or a remand home or in rehabilitation does not necessarily mean that they are a criminal. It's just because of circumstances. They were born from a poor family. One day they were hungry, stole some bread, ended up in jail. And that's how the rest of their life changes. So that also enables you to understand the issues you're dealing with beyond the classroom. It's very important to be at the library. I am a champion for education. I always say study when you can, but please do not live in the library. Leave the library as much as you can to go and actually see the real world. And finally, as I conclude, out of all the work that I've been able to do, I started my YouTube channel just last year to continue talking about these issues. You can check it out, Cynthia Nyongesa on YouTube. You can find it there, and you'll be able to understand more of what I'm saying. And so because of that, the Ministry of ICT, Innovation and Youth Affairs was named me as one of the top 35 under 35 youth in Kenya, specifically in the media category, because I'm able to amplify stories and actually use the stories to bring change. I was also named as one of the United Nations Volunteers of the Year in 2019, and that's service to children. And lastly, last year, I was also selected as one of the fellows of the International Monetary Fund. And the interesting bit about this fellowship with the International Monetary Fund is that they wanted young people to share their ideas on enabling young people to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. And they wanted people to either write or do videos. And I am not going to say I'm a pro in making videos. But you know what I did? I just sat down, took Canva, did a couple of videos here and there, tried to create a few graphics here and there. And there I was named as the winner of the International Monetary Fund Fellowship. So it's really been an interesting journey. I can say it's figuring it out as I go. So if you're still figuring it out like me, it's okay. But I truly believe that at this point in my life, I am where I need to be.